From there, we'll just quickly go over the agenda. You should have received this in your email, but just go over it really quickly. We're going to have an organ bias update. We're going to discuss the SFMS calendar, quick vids, and YouTube, which are both training opportunities. We have some screen highlights from Maria and Scott, electronic reports, batch edit modes, a fun data mart update. We're also going to talk about the life of a warrant, which hopefully will be some good information. Exciting news about the stop pay process, some BT transfers to suspense accounts and LGIP LT transfers. So a little bit of technical knowledge there. We have some introductory information on CA view, and then we'll be wrapping it up. So from there, I am going to turn it over to Andy with Oregon Bias.
Thank you, Justin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Kiza. I am the program administrator for Oregon Buys. And similar to SFMA, we help about 86 agencies go through the procurement process, as well as all of the ORCAPs who can post solicitations and view our statewide price agreements. But the 86 agencies that we use are the only ones that go through the procure to pay process, which includes requisitions, purchase orders, and invoicing. So today we are going to talk a little bit more about the invoice and AP side of the house. But we want to give you a little bit of status update. We are fully implemented in Oregon Buys, and we have been for about a year. Our Wave 3 agencies came online last September, and ODOT came on last October. So since the date, which the date on the bottom is not been updated, but those numbers are as of November 1st, I think is what that should say. We have processed 27,000 invoices for $400 million, and you can see on the right we are essentially processing about over 2,000 invoices a month, and it's approximately $30 million has been about the floor for the last 3-4 months. So we're getting a lot of activity in Oregon Buys, and this also excludes Department of Forestry, who does a lot in Oregon Buys, but they process it a little bit differently, so it skews the graph if we include their data. And ODOT, who is also using Oregon Buys, but they are not part of our stars. They use their own financial system, so their numbers are not included. So our numbers are much higher than that, but even just excluding those, the 2,000 agencies and $30 million is pretty impressive. So that's what we are working with on the Oregon Buys side. I have a couple updates. They're more of just reminders and best practices for the group. Earlier this year, we started automatically sending the purchase order number onto the 530 screen in our stars. And that is included in the multi-purpose code field. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner on the 530 screen, your purchase order number is automatically going to be included, and that way it will be part of the weekly data mart upload, so it can be queried in OB, which we think is a good useful tool. But that also means in Oregon Buys, if you input anything into the multi-purpose code fields, it will be overwritten when it comes into our stars. So we would encourage you not to use the multi-purpose code field in organ buys because it'll get cleared out. But if you do need to make an update, you are able to do that on the 530 screen. So that's just more of a best practice on how the multi-purpose code field is working. You can't use it in organ buys because we've reserved it for the PO number, but you can make updates to it in R stars. I think I have a few other things. The main one is we have seen, as I'm sure a lot of you seen, the dashes issue in Oregon buys, and we've encountered about three different things since we released version 19.0, which was in April of 2024. And that is if your transaction has the longer account code string, that is when it used to be set up by grant number and grant phase and project number and project phase. That's kind of the old way. And now those fields are combined. But if your purchase order in Oregon Buys was originally created under that field, then you essentially have two extra fields, and when those come over into R stars, it creates a dash in each field and then it appends them into the contract number. And so that's why we saw it a lot when we first did that in April. But as time has gone on, we don't have as many of those old purchase orders coming through. So we're seeing fewer issues of that contract number being populated with the double dash in R stars. But the main note to take away is to double check your transactions on the 530 screen to make sure that the accounting codes match what you were expecting to come over from Oregon buys. And that's the reason we have them come over in that hold status and then have to be released by a releaser in R stars. So we can get one last double check of those. More recently, we've seen a few agencies actually have dashes in some of their accounting codes, and those haven't been coming over into R stars correctly. We have a hot fix that will probably be deployed as early as the end of this week, which will make that update and we won't have that last problem. But generally speaking, because Oregon Buys uses a dash as the delimiter in the accounting codes, if you input a dash anywhere in there, be it in the account codes or in a free text field, it's likely going to cause an issue in R stars. And thus, you'll just want to make sure that everything is correctly populated on the 530 screen before you release that batch. I've got two other reminders, and that is if you approve an invoice for payment in Oregon Buys and then subsequently cancel it, the next time your agency uses that invoice number. So if you go in and try to pay it again, say you made an error the first time, so it was approved for payment, you cancel it, and then you correct it by creating a new invoice, you're going to see the original invoice come over into R stars with a reversal transaction. So what you will get is the original invoice, then you'll get a reversal of the original invoice, and then you'll get the new invoice. And this will happen anytime you use that same invoice number, even if it's on a different purchase order, or even if it's a month or two or any time in the future. So it's kind of what we call it kind of a sleeper transaction. That original one is there waiting. And then when the new one comes through, it's going to send all three of them over. So the original, the reversal, and the new. And those can all be cleaned up uh, in our stars on the 5:30 screen, but we see tickets for that, pretty regularly. It happens, and that's what's causing that. We do have a update to that functionality in the next version of Organ Buys, which we are about to begin testing. That's going to be version 19.2, currently scheduled for a production release in January, but that date is up in the air. So we will know more once we have a chance to go through our testing process, and we will issue new guidance and new communication on how that will work if you approve for payment an invoice that has been previously approved and canceled in Organ Buys. And then lastly, a general reminder, I know we're probably all familiar, but we have ORS 190s posted in Organ Buys, and that's required by statute. And any of those that are an interagency agreement, we cannot process payments through Organ Buys because those need to be done on a special way via a balance transfer. And that's not something Organ Buys can handle. Organ Buys only issues standard payments. So it's just a reminder, do not process payments. The general guidance is don't do any payments on anything that counts as an ORS 190. But if you have to, please make sure it's an IGA, but not an IAA. On an interagency agreement, we cannot have payments going through Organ Buys. And I think I've got one more slide, and that is for our champions user group. So we just wanted to bring some awareness to a user group that we have and manage at the Oregon e-procurement team level. And what we do is we get together once a month, and it's an opportunity for us at DAS e-procurement to let agencies know what's coming in Oregon Buys, and also to elicit feedback from the agencies that are using Oregon Buys on things that may not be working properly, areas where they may be a question on a business process, or a potential need for an enhancement in the system. Um, so we do have a lot of our agencies using the procurement process, and they're participating in the champions user group, but we don't have a lot of agencies from the AP side. So if you or anyone from your agency is interested, you can reach out directly to me or to the DAS e-procurement team, and we would be happy to add you to that. We also have a group chat that's used quite often via Teams, where we can provide just general questions and answers on Oregon Buys processes. So if there are any AP users interested in joining our Champions user group, please reach out, and we would be happy to include you. Um, and we also have, this is just a plug for our list serve. So if we have an urgent update or an upcoming quarterly release or a system outage, an example of the email we would send on the right, that goes out to our list serve group. And if you would like to subscribe to that, if you are not already part of it, that link is on the left-hand side of the screen. So it's not a lot of emails. We won't spam you, but definitely quarterly. And if anything urgent is happening, then you'll get an email from our Organ Buys listserv group. With that, I believe that's it for me. I did see a question in the chat, which I will get to real quick, and then I will pass this on. What error results in the R stars in the 5:30 screen is not cleaned up for invoices approved and canceled in the same day? I don't know, Julie, what error you'll see. I just know you will see those 3 transactions. And so if you don't clean up the original and the reversal, then I think your end warrant amount will not be what you're expecting to go out. So that's why you would want to make sure those transactions are cleaned up and you just have one transaction instead of the three, and that one transaction has the correct invoice amount and accounting codes that you are expecting. Um, with that, I think I've hit my time limit. So I believe Carlene is next for calendar, and you are welcome to assume control at your convenience, Carlene.
Okay, I've taken control. Hey, everyone. One of my very favorite kind of special projects I do every year is the calendar. And I'm very, very excited to announce that the PDF and the electronic version are now both available on in our Stay on Schedule section of the SFMS webpage. Uh, we still have the 2024 calendar out there and available, but the 2025 has been newly published and is available for you to pull down. So I strongly suggest that you pull either the PDF or the Outlook calendar, or both if you're uh, uh, really excited about the calendar. Want you to also note, trainings are noted in red throughout the calendar. This is on the PDF calendar, not the electronic calendar. It's take special note that our user groups are in February will be February 4th. In May, it'll be May 6th. And this year, we're going back to an in-person at the Employment Auditorium. So we'll be happy to see everyone there. November, we're going to have it on November 4th. Other offered and planned trainings for next year will be the vendor training in February. D23 basic training is going to happen April 22nd. D23 advanced will be in the next following month, May 21st. The T-Code advanced training in September. I know everybody enjoys a good T-Code training. I know I do. Foreign vendor training will be offered again this year in October. And then the annual 1099 training will happen the first Tuesday in December on December 2nd. That's next year, not this year. That's on the 3rd. Okay, and then important dates that I just generally think everybody should know about. SFMS, the SFMA, the Financial Archive, will happen in early April, and so SFMA will be closed for that Financial Archive verification on Saturday, April 5th. And then again, we will open as soon as everything is verified on Monday. And reminder, there will be no expedite cycle run on that Monday. Even if we're open first thing in the morning, that expedite cycle will not run. Profile roll will happen on the 8th, and that's setting up the new biennium. No, it is not. Yes, it is. Fiscal year, yeah. Yes, it is. Setting up the new biennium, sorry. I'm still mentally in 2024. Expiration program run, the pre-expiration reports will happen April 2nd, and expiration report final will happen in 7/14. And then month 13, FY20 close will happen August 15th. So just some important dates that you should be aware of. And then, of course, my favorite topic is 1099 schedule. For tax year 2024, reports will be available, have already run on 10/18/24. This is last year's calendar, but it runs into 2025 for the tax year. So see 2024 calendar for any processing dates that you need to be aware of up through December and January. And then the 25 calendar will take over again January through April. 1099, shameless plug here, 1099 training will happen on, that should be a 12 there, not a 10. 12/3/24 so next month, the first Tuesday. And that training, I believe, will come out on Workday to sign up this coming month or this coming week, next week. 1099 NECs and MISC production. Please see the 2025 calendar for printed and the first original printed and distributed 1099s will happen January 24th. Of course, the NECs are due prior to the end of January, so we will be submitting those on the 28th. 1099 miscellaneous will be resubmitted to the IRS at the end of March. And then monthly reporting to the IRS will happen through April 28th as scheduled and as needed. If 1099 NEC and MISC, there are additional corrections after that. We do those if needed and occurs, and these, we do have the scheduled ones, of course, per the 2025 schedule. Hopefully I didn't confuse anyone. A lot of dates. So here again, we have provided you the links to the 2025 calendars PDF and the electronic and the PDF 2024 calendar if you have not pulled it down, or the electronic calendar if you have not pulled it down. They are still out there and still available. So I hope you don't have any questions. I hope you're as excited as I am about the coming year and the schedule we have submitted. Okay. Amber is our next presenter, and she's going to talk to you about quick vids and YouTube.
Thanks, Carlene. All right. I get to talk to you about the quick vid training series that the Office of the State Controller is doing. If you haven't seen them before, they are just some quick videos that walk you through beginning to end how to do different types of entries. You can find them on the SARS website, the Statewide and Accounting and Reporting website, under Training and Resources, or there's a link down here in the slides for you. So the quick vids are a visual and audio explanation of the fact pattern. They'll go through what kind of entry we're doing and what it means. And then you can follow an entry map and watch the actual entries that happen in R-Stars. So instead of just reading black and white paper about this is how you do the entry, you can actually watch someone make the entry and just click some extra pieces in there. And then to wrap it up, they go through the DAFA reports and look through the entries that were made and review them for accuracy. And it's just meant to be a help. So exciting news, we have some new ones coming out this month. So be watching for our quick vid training new videos. And then we are on YouTube. So I'm sure you guys have all kinds of exciting things on your YouTube channel, but you should add DAS Oregon. I think it's the like and subscribe with YouTube. I'm not sure though. Anyway, check us out on YouTube. We are on DAS Oregon and we have our own playlist, SFMS. And so go over to YouTube and look up DAS Oregon, or I have it linked up there on the slide for you. We do want you to know that this is the first place we post our trainings. So it takes a little bit of time to get them on YouTube and then from that point up to the website. And so if you're thinking, hey, I can't get back to the recording, I've probably already worked on getting it sent over to YouTube. So go check there first. Or if you are just thinking, you can't remember what training that was in, right there on the SFMS playlist, you could just kind of flip through and they're all there. Also, that is where we post the quick vids, so you could find that there. And just kind of, again, you'd be able just to flip through the different things we have there. So on your weekends, just kidding, but we are on YouTube. All right, up next, we have Scott with some screen highlights.
Thank you, Amber. We're proud to be presenting these screen highlights. Though first and foremost, you may be wondering, how are we going to get through 4 separate screens in 15 minutes? I promise this will make a lot more sense. Hence, I am going to be talking about how these screens relate to one another, or how they differ. Or we have project screens, grant screens, and I'm going to be explaining the difference between the descriptive profiles and the non-descriptive profile. First off, we have the D42 project number profile. This establishes the project number and title for the for the 27 screen. Budgeting by project phase is determined through this screen. It can also be set up as a special select option for DAFR 6600 and 6630. Set this up before setting up screen 27. And the project control profile. It's used to identify, account, and bill for projects, and uses various data segments for classification. This profile is maintained by the controlling or servicing agency, so you will be setting that up as well. The control key for the project profile consists of agency, project number, project phase, and agency code 2. Project number and agency are shared with the D42 profile, so make sure the project number profile is set up first. Next, we have the grant number profile, D47, and it's set up similarly to the D42 profile. You establish the grant number and grant title to flow to the 29 screen. Budgeting by grant phase is determined by this profile, is a special select option for 3 separate DAFR reports. Please set this up first before setting up screen 29, the grant control profile. Meanwhile, this identifies, accounts for, and bills for grants with various data segments for classification. This profile is also maintained by the controlling or servicing agency, so that's on you. And the grant profile control key, which consists of agency, grant number, grant phase, and agency code 1. On grant and agency number are shared with the D47 profile, so please set up the descriptive profile first. Now, I know we went through a lot, and you may have noticed I repeated myself for those past 6 slides. It's because these profiles have a lot in common. And on this slide, I want to show you something that all 4 profiles have in common. The effective start date, effective end date, and the status code. Effective start date, when you type it in, it rejects transactions earlier than the effective start date. Effective end date rejects transactions later than the effective end date. And if the status code is set to active, it will accept transactions between those 2 dates. If it is set to inactive, it will not accept any transactions at all. Let's see. You want to use a specific project/grant combination, you will need to activate and properly date all 4 profiles. I know I've had to send out some communications regarding this, so if this is a little confusing to you, don't worry, we have specialists for it. Now, the 27 and D42 project profiles have some elements in common. For example, project type. The D42 profile leads into the screen 27. So what's on screen 27 must match what is on D42. You can categorize projects as capital projects, interagency agreements, external projects, and other projects. Likewise, grant type has a similar structure. are for the 29 and D47 screens, just with a lot more grant types. We don't have time to get into all these types. Just remember that these types are based on the source of money. If the money is reimbursable or in advance, and if the grant is direct or indirect, along with various combinations of the above. So, well, for the descriptive profiles, we have the phase budget level indicator, which controls if the project or grant is controlled at the phase level or not if the project is on the project grant financial table. Whereas the agency budget level indicator controls if the project is posted to the agency budget / financial table. Agency budget level indicator is a bit more nuanced. You can post it by grant project level indicator 1, phase level indicator 2, or you don't need to post it at all, just input 0 at the time. So, budget level in blank budget level indicator, yes or no. Agency budget level indicator, or you have to know the difference between 0, 1, and 2. For the non-descriptive profiles, we have the SGL post-level indicator, which gives the ability to maintain a project grant general ledger and inquire on the balance sheet based within a project or phase. These are similar to the agency budget level indicator discussed in the last slide. So this should be a little familiar. However, control post indicator determines if an error will occur if the project or grant expenditure goes over the expendable budget. 1, for fatal errors, the transaction will not post. 2, for advisory warning, it will warn you that this is happening, but will not prevent the transaction from posting. And 0 for none, which it will not warn you if you're going over your expendable budget. Just make sure you set this up carefully for what your agency needs. It's if you want this to prevent you from going over the expendable budget, set up the control post indicator as a 1. If you just want to warn you, but occasionally you'll need to post things that go over the expendable budget, set it up as a 2. Now, this is a bit of a complex one. Both 27 and 29 screens have a billing indicator. This indicator determines how the project / grant will be billed. They can be standard cost per unit, standard percentage, actual, or any one of the last 3 options to budget. The last 2 indicators on this list relate to auto billing and are only available for grants, or you can enter 0 and have it not billed at all. Now, I hope this screen will help you make sense of the relations between these profiles. D42 leads into the 27 screen, and they are both project profiles. D47 leads into the 29 screen, and they are both grant profiles. D42 and D47 are descriptive profiles. 27 to 29 are non-descriptive, and the D42 has no relation to screen 29. Finally, D47 has no relation to screen 27. I know that was a lot of information to cover. I just hope this last slide I can get your bearings on something things if you are a little lost. For additional resources, please check out Chapter 5 of our R-Stars data entry guide, descriptive profiles, if you want to learn more about the D42 and D47 screens, and check out Chapter 6, non-descriptive profiles, if you want to learn more about screen 27 and screen 29. Any questions so far? I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I will. Oh, you have something, Amber?
No, sorry. I was just going to say I don't see any in the chat, Scott. And so, but then you said it, so
Okay.
We're good.
Of course.
Thank you, Scott.
Sorry to interrupt then. Well, I'm going to pass it on to Rose Maddox, who will be talking about changing printed reports to electronic reports. Take it away, Rose.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rose Maddox. And Amber, if you could switch it to the next slide, because whenever I take control, it just like says something weird. So we're talking about how to change your printed reports to reports that are not being printed. To minimize the expense of printing and delivering reports, agencies will need to convert their printed reports to an electronic format. Delivery of reports printed at the desk print plant ceased in June 2024. If you have reports that contain invoices, they should be continuing to be printed and shuttled to your agency. So if your reports currently are sent to a printer at your agency will need to make the decision whether or not you want to continue printing those reports on paper or have them set up so that you could receive them electronically. Next slide, Amber. The report distribution profile. The R-STARS 95 report distribution profile tells the system what format to use for your report and how it should deliver it. The first line of the profile screen will identify the agency, the requester, the request number, the report ID, and the distribution code. The second line of the profile screen for the 95 profile will identify the media type that will be used for the report. Next slide. If the media type begins with SPL, that means it will be sent to the central printing at DAS Printing and Distribution. This should now only be used for invoices or dunning letters. And I believe those are reports that begin with 98. If the media type is RJE, the report will be routed to a printer at your agency. This media type will also have a printer ID with it. Next slide. So this is an example of a 95 profile that will send the report to the print plant. As you can see, the media type is highlighted and it is SPL1. These reports, as I indicated, will no longer be printed unless they are a report that begins with 98. Next slide. So the media type on the 95 profile of your report begins with SPL and the report does not produce invoices, you will need to change your 95 profile so it will produce a report in electronic format. To do this, you will need to change the distribution code and the media type that are on the 95 profile for the report. Next slide. For the report to be produced electronically, the distribution code and the media type must be WRP1 or WRP2. We recommend WRP1 as this produces the reports using the landscape orientation. The WRP2 will use portrait orientation, but sometimes if that orientation is used, all the data, you might lose some of the data if it's actually a landscape report. So even though a hard copy report will not be produced, the system requires information in the name and address one field. For the report to be produced, the status of the 95 profile should also be A. Next slide. This is an example of a 95 profile set up using the distribution code of WRP1 and the media type of WRP1 to show you how your 95 profile should be set up in order to make sure the reports are sent electronically to the web web report page. Next slide, Amber. If you have any questions or concerns as how to make these changes, please work with your SFMS agency analyst. You can find your SFMS analyst name on the RStars 90 screen, keyword news on page 05. Next slide. So any questions? I don't see anything in the chat. I believe Liz Schultz is next.
Thank you, Rose. Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Schultz. I'm going to talk to you about batch edit modes a little bit this morning before we have our first break today. So batch edit modes, you may have heard of these if you've worked with RStars for some time. This is what appears on the 500 batch header entry screen. You have the option of what edit mode you want to use to enter a batch. So the batch edit mode on transactions determines the timing of when they will attempt to post in RStars. And there's two different types of edits that are performed by RStars. There's what are called data element edits, and then there are financial edits. So the data element edits, it's making sure the coding is valid. Are you entering a valid index, PCA, agency object, project number? Financial edits are looking at specific system constraints, specifically budget and cash. So do you have enough budget and allotment available for the transaction? Do you have a sufficient cash balance to post the transactions? So those are the two different types of edits that can be performed. With the batch edit modes in RStars, there's actually 5 different options that you could see. I'm going to talk about the first 3, batch edit mode 0, 1, and 2. Those are your only options when actually entering a transaction in RStars. You can enter it in edit mode 0, 1, or 2, and each of those have different timing of when those different edits will be performed. You can see we've got a little bit of a table here kind of explaining the difference between each of those, and I'm going to go into more detail on each of these in the next slide. We also have edit modes 3 and 4. These are system generated. You can't actually enter edit mode on 3 or 4 on your batch header, but you may see them on the 530 screen. So when you're entering a batch using edit mode 0, 1, or 2, if there's some sort of key event in RStars during the nightly cycle, you may come back the next morning and you may see that batch has updated to be in edit mode 3 or 4. So the next slides, I'm going to go through each of these batch edit modes just to give you a little bit more information on each one. So edit mode 0 is really data entry only. It's not performing any edits. You can input the transaction, you can save it, but it's not verifying that the coding is accurate. It's not verifying that you have enough budget or cash available. It's not going to do those edits until the nightly cycle after the batch has been released. So anything that's interfaced to our system, if you have a subsystem and you're interfacing transactions, Oregon buys interfaces, those are all coming in an edit mode 0. So for Oregon buys, you're going to see the transactions appear on your 530 screen, but edits aren't going to be performed right away. You're going to have to release the batch, and then during the nightly cycle, it will perform those edits. So in edit mode 0, both the data element edits and the financial edits are not performed until the nightly processing cycle is run and the batch is in release status. Any errors will appear the next day. You can find them looking at the actual transactions, drilling down to them from the 530 screen, or if you use the DAFR 2151 error report, you will see errors on there as well. So transactions aren't going to be posted against the financial tables in RStars until the nightly processing cycle after all the edits are passed. So edit mode 0 is just kind of an input only. It's not actually verifying anything. It's not posting anything until the batch has been released and all edits have cleared. Edit mode 1 will perform some edits. It'll do, is the coding valid, those data element edits. It'll verify that while you're trying to save the transaction. If there's problems, you'll have to correct them before you can save it. But it's not doing any of the financial edits to make sure that there's enough budget and cash. That's going to be performed in the nightly cycle after the batch is released. You'll see any errors the following morning, either online or on the DAFR 2151 error report. So again, transactions with this edit mode aren't posting to the RSTARS financial tables until the nightly processing cycle runs. Batch edit mode 2 is by far the most common one we see. A lot of users are set up to default to edit mode 2 on the batch header entry screen. With this edit mode, it's edit and post. So it's performing both the data element edits and the financial edits immediately when you save the transaction. So as I mentioned, most agencies are using this if they're entering transactions directly in RSTARS, or if you're using a macro to input transactions. You must correct any errors before you can successfully save the transaction. And with edit mode 2, you will see the transactions post as soon as it's saved. So if you make your entry and then you go look at one of the financial inquiry screens in RSTARS, the 89 screen, the 62 screen, the 63 screen, you'll see the impacts of those transactions included on those screens as soon as that transaction has saved. The other thing with edit mode 2 batches is if you entered a transaction in a prior week, but that batch is still on the 530 screen and it hasn't been released yet, it'll still appear in reports and queries the following week. So if you enter your batch on Friday with edit mode 2, and then Monday morning you run some OB queries, you will see those transactions included, even though they haven't been released, because edit mode 2 is posting as soon as it's saved. Edit modes 3 and 4, as I mentioned, it's not something you can input the transaction with, but if you're going to look at your 530 screen, you could see those edit modes on your batches. Edit mode 3 means they're batches that have errors within them. So the system will assign it to edit mode 0 or edit mode 1 batches that were found to contain errors during the nightly processing cycle. So for example, those Oregon buys batches, if you released it, if there are errors with the coding or not having enough cache, you will see that batch appear on your 530 screen the following morning in edit mode 3. You'll need to review those error messages either online or with the DAFR 2151 error report and correct them and re-release the batch. And then the transactions will again attempt to post in the next nightly cycle. Another reminder, your SFMS analysts have let you know about this at month end as well. If you have batches in edit mode 3 or edit mode 0 or edit mode 1, those need to clear the Thursday night before Friday month end if it has an effective date for that closing month. The transactions for those batches aren't going to attempt to post until the nightly batch cycle. So when we get to month end, Friday, the month ends at 5:30. It's the batch cycle isn't going to occur until after that. So you'll miss that month end close deadline. So just important to keep in mind, if you have a transaction that you're entering on Friday that you want to get in for month end, you need to use edit mode 2. Edit mode 4 is not as common. It means waiting for approval or a payment. The system will assign the batch this. Typically, we see this if you have a future due date on a payment. So if you've entered a voucher payable, you've put the date out for a month before you actually want to generate that payment, and you've released the batch, you may see that batch in edit mode 4, which means it's posted, there were no errors, but it's going to continue to hang on the 530 screen until that due date is reached and a payment is generated and a payment number can be assigned for that voucher. We do have more information in our SFMS desk manual. There's a link on this. And I want to pause to see, Amber, do we have any questions?
We do. Do batches process through the nightly batch cycle regardless of whether they're released or not?
The only ones, Shasta, that will attempt to process every night are payroll batches, batch type 8. You don't have to release those. They're going to try to release every single night. Every other type of batch, you need to release it for it to go through that nightly cycle.
Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions. So at that, I believe we are to the break. So we will go ahead and take 10 minutes and we can be back at 10:05.
Well, hello. It's about that time. Break time's over. Hopefully you're back and ready to go again. I'm Aaron Wallace, and I'm going to be talking about the Data Mart and OBIEE. And I want to start out by thanking the SFMS team for allowing me to speak just a little bit about what is happening in the Data Mart. Of course, lots of things have been changing, and I want to make sure we are all on the same page. So let's start with the trainings that are available to you. The 4 trainings you see here are all on Workday Learning. So it's pretty easy to go out there, click on Workday Learning, and then search and then find these exact trainings. Now, I highly recommend taking each training as it will help you get started with OB as well as the Data Mart. Also, if you haven't reviewed these trainings in a while, I'd also recommend to go back and check them out again. It can be a really good refresher. I know that recently I had quite a few people wanting to learn about how to schedule a file to run automatically, and this is called creating an agent. And instructions can be found within the first training listed here. And as you can see on the bottom of this slide, if you run into any issues with the Data Mart or OB1, please email datamartsupport@das.oregon.gov. Now, this inbox has coverage even when I'm out of the office, and I do not want you guys having to wait for me when I'm gone. So please send your emails to that address, and do not worry, I have a great backup team, and they will be able to answer your questions. An important note, if you are sending in questions about OB1, please make sure to include the file name and directory that you're having problems. Now, that's at a minimum now for us to review it properly. Now, of course, if you have any other details such as a screenshot or stuff like that, that'll also be very, very helpful. Okay. Next, we have here are some good reminders where first off, we have 2 OB environments. I don't know if you knew that. We have a test and prod, but they do use the same username and password to get into each environment, even though they're a different website location. But they do need proper security access to get into them. And of course, system security would provide that to you. In addition, we only use the test environment for either admin or special projects. And once the special project is complete, we do remove the test access. And for example, this recent OPE project is now over, so we will be removing users from the test environment soon. So if you're wondering, you try and go in there, we are moving people out because we do have a project coming soon. As a note, if you receive any error message just trying to get to those sites, then it normally means that you do not have proper security access, or there could be a firewall issue with your agency. So please email Data Mart support, let us know what's going on so we can figure out your specific issue. The next reminder on the slide talks about passwords, and they're only valid for 90 days in OB1. And there is no alert, so I recommend inputting a pop-up reminder on your Outlook calendar so that you don't forget to update prior to the expiration. Okay, I don't want you to have to go out there and always get that reset because Data Mart support does not do resets, so you do have to go in a different avenue to do that. So it is difficult. So make sure you're resetting those beforehand. Now, there was a recent email that went out to DAS discussing password policy changes. Now, DAS IT plans to actually make passwords good for only 60 days and increase the character length. So trying to be a little bit more secure, but this will affect DAS users of OB as we are a sync agency. So whatever your work computer password is, that will be the same for OB. So you will need to make sure it's still the same. And because you're forced to change it every 60 days, then you will use that same password. Now, the old RACF Data Mart password should still be 8 characters. That's not going to change. And that still is a 90 days as well. So I'm not sure if any other agency is changing their security policy as well, but if you have any questions, just let me know. Now on this list, a reminder of also to check out the OB1 repository. Now, I said this a million times, but it's such a good place where you can find out files that have already been created for you. and that are available to you at any time in that directory shown here. Now, this should save you a lot of time and effort, especially if there's a file already providing the data you desire. Now, I know every agency is a little different, so don't be shy. Open those up, check them out. Maybe they work for you, maybe only a little bit of it works. Then you can go ahead, save it to your own directory, and then alter it a little bit so that it fits your needs. Okay, but the starting point is right here on that shared folders, repository, and final. Okay, so make sure you check that out. On this slide, there's some additional good reminders. First, do not, and I repeat, do not combine subject areas in OB. There is a button in there that says, combine, but that's not good for our purposes. Now, I know that some of you tried this, however, it will not work properly, and the query will actually maybe not even complete, and if it does, it will give you incorrect data. It'll start duplicating things. It'll get you just really bad results. Also, those take forever to run because they're not really meant to combine together, such as, let's say, the all account event and the GL detail or something like that. Trying to combine those into one subject area just doesn't work properly. So what we've gone and done for you is my tech support has carefully created the established subject areas that are out there with the proper joins. So you don't have to worry about it. You can just grab one subject area and use it and go for it. But if you do have some kind of suggestion, like maybe there's a subject area that's not out there for you that you need, please send a request into Data Mart support and we will analyze if it's at all possible to make that happen for you. Okay. So next is about filtering. Now we must, and I repeat, must remember that we want to include filters on every query. And I mean everyone, it doesn't matter what it is, every query should have a filter on it. And we start by including agency and then a date each time. Now the date is very specific here. Fiscal year should be your best date filter. Now if fiscal year is not available, then AY is acceptable, and those two would be your best dates. Now throwing in just effective date is, yeah, okay, it's helpful, but fiscal year is so important. It makes queries run so much faster. I've had a person, not have the proper fiscal year date on there, took over an hour to run. They put a fiscal year, it was less than a minute. So it's such a huge increase. Very, very important. Let's put it on every single query we have out there. And go back. Maybe these queries were built a long time ago. Open them up, check them out. Make sure they have at least those two filters on every single query. I can't stress enough how important it is. All these problems that we're having today with OB is due to this kind of stuff, that we're not putting enough filters on our queries. Okay, so we need to be just very, very strict with what we do and put those out there. Okay. All right. Last note on this slide is very important. Now, I know that OB seems to be a bit slow lately when logging in, and I know it's frustrating, and therefore I wanted to at least give you a little tip and trick that after you put in your credentials and you click, log in, and you're sitting there waiting, and it's like, oh man, this is weird. It's not going right in, because normally it goes right in, right? Well, lately we've had this weird kind of strange thing where it's kind of taken a little bit to get in. Now, if it is, you can go ahead and click your refresh button on whatever internet application you're using. So it just refreshes the page, right? It should be probably up in the left-hand corner, a little refresh icon. Now, once you do that, it will refresh the page, and you will have to put your credentials in again. But the second time you put in your credentials, it just goes right in really super quick. Now, I'm not really sure why this happens, but it's just a little workaround that I found does a pretty good job. And, try it out. If you're running into that kind of problem where it's just so frustrating that you just, wow, I can't even get in, check that out and try that trick. Okay. Here's another update and reminder that I wanted to provide with you guys, and that is recently we have created a new field, and now I know it's payroll related, but it is an SFMS period end date field is what it's called. It's what we titled it. Now this field works just like the old pay period end field did in OSPS. Now I know people have been clamoring for this kind of field for quite a while because, where did it go? We lost it once Workday came about. And what it actually does is it pulls run 1 and 2 data for a month. So all you need to do is input the filter the last day of the month, such as, let's say, in this example here, June. and boom, you're going to have both run 1 and run 2 data. Now let's look at more of these here now. I just put 3 examples in here and a little chart. So on the right hand side, you can see report effective date. On the very far side says 6/26/24 and 7/10 are the report effective dates of run 1 and run 2. And so we used to have to put report effective dates in there and put both dates in there. So it's a little bit more on the filtering, right? To get the proper dates. Well, now all we have to do is put an SFMS period end date of 6/30 and bam, we'll get both run 1 and run 2. Same goes for July when we have 7/29 and 8/12 as the report effective dates. All we have to do is put in 7/31, the very final date of the month. And the same goes for August, where we have the 8/27 and 9/10 report effective dates, and then we just had to put in 8/31. So that goes for every single month. Just put in the last day of the month, and you'll be able to filter it just like we used to in the past. So going to save you a little, kind of a little step there. And you can see the current period end date on the CECD table is a little different, a little weird, and so it actually gives you, I'm not really sure how that calculates, but it's a little different dates in there and not truly what you're truly looking for when you're trying to grab run 1 and run 2. Okay, so this I think will really help. Hopefully you're using it if you're out there doing payroll data. If not, make sure your people know about it that are your payroll professionals, because this is really going to help them. Okay. All right, some things here on this slide are what's new and coming soon to the data mart. So a couple of things. First item there is the list is very exciting to me, I think, is our other payroll expense or OPE project is actually complete. Woohoo! It took a while, but a big shout out to Rhonda Bachman, who led the project, as well as a lot of other people who contributed to create this new process. Now, as a reminder, this new data will have an OP type code so that it can easily be queried. Also, the new OPE info is automatically loaded each payroll run now. So we got that automated. We no longer have to do it manual runs. So it's really great. But yes, I know another payroll related thing. A lot of people here are SFMS people, but you know, it's always good to have this information at your disposal. Also on this slide, I wanted to make sure that users are aware that we have joined the HCM table to the CECD payroll table. So this will allow all the HCD fields to be used. Now, if you work with payroll or know somebody that does, you know, please again, pass this along. This is another one that's really helpful where the people were wanting the RDC field, which they weren't being able to get, and now they can. So they can just drag and drop and boom, there it is. Third on this list, we have completed a work request to add the DO4 Orbit's XREF field to the Workday and SFMS subject areas in OB. So this field is included on all the PCA profile tables, so you can add it to any of your queries. So it's a very nice change. And last but not least, I did want to mention that we do have a OB security change to Azure project coming down the pike. Now, Azure is just a Microsoft security, and we're going to change from our current ARS security to Azure security. Now, this is truly tech support is going to be working on this soon, but they're going to be doing all the main heavy lifting, and really it's going to be a minimal impact to users. Mainly just a login screen. It would look a little different. You'll just click a button instead of normally inputting all your information. So actually it's going to be easy for you guys, but that will be coming around the corner. So I'll be able to give you more updates once we get going on that project. All right. Well, guess what? That's all I have for today. Hopefully that was informative, and I appreciate your time. Are there any questions? No? Well, we can definitely pass it along.
I don't see any questions, Aaron. I think you're good.
Pass it along to Juan.
Okay, good morning. This is my name is Juan Maraver, and I'll be presenting Life of a Warrant. My screen looks different, but let me see. Okay. The warrants are legally a request for payment by the holder of the warrant. Like a check, they represent a valid and legal claim, but the payable is not payable on demand like a check. A warrant is payable if funds are available to pay. If funds are not available, the warrants are payable with the next available funds. The life of a warrant starts with the agency making an expenditure. The system prints a remittance advice with a warrant. The remittance advice includes the agency number, invoice number, and invoice description entered on the transaction entry screen. Warrants are printed at the state printing plant each weekday morning. All warrants with a payment distribution type PDT specifying return to agency will be delivered to state disbursements SFMS. Agencies may pick up warrants or disbursements will mail them to the agency. The state print plant mails the remaining warrants directly to the warrant payee. A warrant can have a different type of actions. I'll give you a brief description of each one of these actions. Redeem warrant. Most commonly, the payee will redeem the warrant. Warrants remain in I status until they are either redeemed or canceled. When agency staff determine a warrant should be canceled, they write cancel on the warrant and complete the form they download from the web. The website is down right here on this side over here. These reason codes are listed on the back side of the form. This slide shows the link to the SFMS forms and resources. You'll find a lot of information on this website. This slide will walk you through the key decision points and provides appropriate action. You can find this warrant cancel stop decision tree at the SFMS resource website or webpage. Expired warrant. Outstanding warrants over 2 years old will be marked as expired on Monday, July 14. Agencies are responsible for ensuring these warrants are still owed to the payee when they are reported to the Department of Treasury on September 30th. If they are no longer owed, the agency is responsible to request a stop payment or cancellation before the warrant is allowed to expire. The final report will be produced on July 14 with a nightly batch cycle and ready for agencies to view online the next day. This report will contain the warrants that have been expired. Warrants on this report will have an E in the payment status field on the screen 44. A stop payment warrant may redeem on the same day of processing the stop. A stop payment warrant may redeem in error. A stop payment warrant may redeem after the 24-month effective period lapses. SFMS operations accounts for expiring warrants annually. The funds become available to the payee through the state lands and claim property section. The payee can file a claim for payment of an expired warrant and then later find the expired warrant and bank it, resulting in a double payment. Fraudulent redemption warrants may include warrants with an altered amount or a counterfeit check. These create a mismatch during the redemption batch cycle. Treasury can initiate return of fraudulent items caught within 24 hours after receiving redemption information. An encoding error occurs when the bank redeems the warrant for an amount different from the amount issued or redeems in the wrong under $5. We do not send a transfer request for amounts below $5 unless it is part of the multi-fund warrant. SFMS operations writes off these general fund errors at the end of the biennium. If a redemption error occurs for more than $5, a fund transfer or expired reimbursement request is processed. A counterfeit warrant is an unauthorized warrant that redeems as an original. You will discover to be a counterfeit item by inspecting the image. The image will include the 1050-501 account number, but may not have the appearance of a state issue P&D warrant. These are some different useful screen where you can find the different screen useful to research warrants. Each one requires different type of information to find what you need. This concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions? No questions. Next is Maria.
Hi, and good morning. I will take control. Okay, we are going to talk about stop payment process. We try to automate more, so we'll make it easier for you guys to submit the request for stop pay. So I just want to show you the process, but we are going to start on December 1st, launching our new process, and we are hoping to get fully in this new line by January 1st of 2025. So whole December will give us some time to adjust from the current PDF format to this new format. So we will have this form, this link posted in our website. So you will be able to get our instruction and link in our website. And will open as a MS form, which is Microsoft form, in your browser. And it is it can be open in any browsers you have as a default. It will not make any differences. So when you get that our big announcement before December 1st, and in our website, you will see the link and instruction. When you click on it, you will see something like this. Nothing really changed. It is exactly like the current process, that PDF questions we have. We tried to actually eliminate some of the questions. So we reduced the number of the questions you had to fill out and make it easier for you. So let's look at all the items. So first couple items are common ones. You will pick your agency name and number. So when you click on this drop down box, you will see the agency number and then agency name. So it's sorted by agency number. So if you are like agency 107, probably you are on top. If you are agency start with 8 or 7, you know you need to scroll down. And payment number, which is the warrant number, make sure will match the R stars, like current process. Vendor name, which is the payee name, and the amount, dollar amount. And then we try reduce the reason. You will see 3 options for the reason. It would be warrant error. It can be anything like issued in error, wrong payee, wrong amount. That will go to first category. Second category will be warrant is missing. It can be destroyed, thrown away, stolen, lost, thrown in laundry or something. It's not readable. Anything like that, or my dog chewed on it. Anything can go to that warrant missing, or others if you are not sure, is it warrant error or warrant missing. So then prepper and manager email address. So these 2 items are very important for us. Please take your time to identify who is filling the form and submitting this stop, and who's the manager or approval. So as you know, we do not have any sort of authorized people's list or name, which will make it so hard to maintain because of the number of the turnovers happens between all agencies, and keep it update would be hard. So we rely on these two items if we had any questions. So if I receive this stop pay and I see warrant number is not matched to amount or payee name is not correct, I need to contact to agency immediately, especially if they are big numbers sometimes, and it is crucial to be stopped on time. So make sure you have prepared email address completely there. And since we know agencies managers, so we have that information, that manager's email address will give me that security that, yeah, this request is coming from legit source. So the manager email address is very important for me to know the who's submitting this form. It is legit person from the agency. And the thing it's make it more secure for us is as soon as you submit the form, you will receive something like this. And this, in this stage, it will email to both that email addresses who fill the form and the manager. So in this case, manager will receive some notice in the email says stop pay with warrant number ABC has been submitted. So that is another secure way for the agency manager to monitor the stops goes through from the agency. And here is the sample of that email will go out as soon as you hit submit. Email, something like this, will go out to who prepared the stop request and the manager. So please keep it, save it, create some sort of maybe warrant stop folder in your Outlook for just, for your documentation. In future, if you had any questions, you can refer back to it as your documentation, or if audit need to be needed some extra documents from you later on. And if you had any questions, please always email to our group email address, warrant-to-stop-cancel.1.sfms, because if you send only to me, it is okay. I will try to get back to you. But in case if I was out of the office, then my backup would not have an access to that, to your question, to back to you on time. But if you send to our inbox, warrant to stop inbox, then my backup will have an access to it in case I was busy, I was out of the office, and he or she, or Scott or Liz, need to back me up. They will have an access to see your question and get back to you on time. Any questions? Okay, so just wait for us for new announcement and have the link in our website. Thank you so much.
There is a question, Maria, before you go.
Oh,
can you
sure.
Go ahead. Can you put more than one address in the manager's email address field? Our agency has to reverse these entries in our subsystem, and the accountant has to do those.
So no, I think it should get just one address for each field. And our agency has to reverse these entries in our subsystem, and the accountant. If you means the stop pays, so just help me understand the question better. So when you fill out this form and submit it, it will come to me. So I will review these forms and I will stop the warrants on 44 screen. And over the nightly cycle, this process will go through and system will generate the W batches. And you will not usually see them on 5:30 screen if they do not have any errors. But if they contain some errors, then they will bounce back on 5:30 screen and we will take care of it. And usually I reach back out to the agencies and let them know what is the errors about, and I will release the batches. Our AP staff currently copy the accountant when these are done. We can have the AP manager forward this to us if need to be. That sounds good. Yes, for me, it is important to know the accountant manager in manager line, or because they are the people, I usually have them in my general contact list. And the people as an analyst, I usually, I'm in direct contact with them when we get report errors or any sort of batch errors or any other communication. So that will give me that kind of authorization security check to make sure that stops come from the legit source. Any other question? Okay, thank you.
There is one more question, Maria. She just wants clarification. Will the manager get a copy of this?
Sure, yes. That 2 email addresses, which is one who prepped and then manager email address, who you put there will receive the notification with all the information, warrant number, payee, and all the information you put on the form as an email. So that is another way for the manager to monitor the stops going out from the agency.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Maria. And as Maria mentioned, pay attention to SFMS News. We'll be sending out more information, but we are planning on rolling out that change on December 1st, so about a month from now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about balance transfers. It's a large topic, so I'm focusing specifically on suspense and LGIP accounts. We've helped some agencies with some errors related to balance transfers to a suspense or LGIP account. So I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about those today. So some background, just what I'm talking about related to balance transfers. Balance transfer transactions, they're used for various different transfers and reclassifications in the system. And they must be entered using a pair of balance transaction T-codes. We will be talking about balance transfer T-codes a lot more in the advanced T-code training we have scheduled for 2025. But for a balance transfer transaction, just some key things to remember. There needs to be at least 2 transactions in a document. There may be more, but there needs to be at least 2 transactions for a balance transfer. Both sides of the transactions are processed together, and all the transactions, the ins and the outs per document number, must net to 0 because it's a balance transfer. Everything needs to balance. So there are a lot of different T-code pairs that can be used for recording BTs, balance transfers, and R-stars. And it's really important to select the correct T-code pair to make sure that the information is recorded correctly in the accounting system, and also to make sure that funds are correctly transferred at Oregon State Treasury if funds will be crossing between different Treasury accounts. So there's 3 basic categories of balance transfers. There's intra-agency transfers. That's if you're doing reclassifications or corrections within your agency, maybe between funds within your agency or within a fund. Those T-code pairs usually are in the 400 series of our numbering convention for T-codes. The document type is typically starts with a BT. There are some other options. You can look at the 28B screen for the T code to see all the available options for the document types. We also have interagency transfers. This is to record transactions between agencies. So if you're transferring cash to another agency. Those T code pairs are typically found within the 700 series of the numbering. And again, the document type is typically BT, but there could be some other options there. And then we have SFMA to LGIP transfers. So this is recording transfers to the local government investment pool, LGIP. Those T codes range from 291 through 294 and 298 through 299. They'll typically start with the document type of LT. Again, there's some other options as well, but that's the different types of balance transfers that we have in the system. So some key things with intra-agency and interagency transfers, some factors to consider whenever you're recording this type of activity. The first question is the activity considered revenue, expenditure, transfer in, or transfer out? We have a lot of different T code pairs, and it depends how the activity needs to be classified to make sure that you select the correct one. And for interagency transfers, if you're transferring funds to another agency, you may need to coordinate with that receiving agency to make sure you know how they need it classified on their side, so you can correctly select the T code pair that you need to make that entry. There is more guidance available on this in the Oregon Accounting Manual. Chapter 15 has some guidance on what to use for those. You'll also need to figure out, once you've determined what type of activity, what coding is going to be used. Different T code pairs allow different comptroller objects, so that might help you select which T code pair is the right one to use. For interagency transfers, the originating agency, the agency that's sending the money, will be coding both sides of the transfer. So you may need to reach out to the receiving side to confirm what coding they want you to use for that balance transfer. RSTARS has controls to not allow one agency to enter an entry that would reduce cash for another agency. So paying attention to, who is sending the cash, that's the agency that's going to have to record both sides of the BT. The other thing that needs to be considered is what treasury accounts are going to be used for this balance transfer. Maybe you're transferring, all within the same treasury account, but if you're crossing treasury accounts, we have different T code pairs to use if it's a receipted account versus a suspense account. So if you're transferring funds, especially across to another agency, confirming with them what type of account is going to be receiving the funds. If it's going to be a suspense account, for example, if you're making a transfer to payroll, that is a suspense account. So you have to use different T codes for that, for it to process correctly. And whenever you're making a transfer of cash between treasury accounts, do not backdate the effective date. It's the movement of cash. You want that balance transfer effective date to reflect when the cash actually moved. So I mentioned receipted versus suspense accounts. If you're not familiar with those terms, what I mean by a receipted account, they're agency accounts. It also includes the statewide accounts that we have for the general fund and lottery. How you can tell if it's a receipted account, it's assigned a treasury fund of 0400 through 7999 on the D23 fund profile. So you can look up the associated D23, look at the treasury fund to determine, is it in that range if it's a receipted account. These types of accounts are controlled within SFMA. Warrants can be issued from them. Any deposits to those accounts will show up on the 13 screen. The other type of account is a suspense account. Treasury also refers to these as TRS accounts. These are set up directly with Treasury. Their numbering tends to be 0000 through 0399 or 8000 to 998 on the D23 fund profile. So if you see a Treasury fund in that range, it'll also often have a title of suspense to indicate that it's a suspense account. So these accounts are not controlled within SFMA. Checks could be issued from those accounts only if it's been previously approved by both Treasury and DAS. And any deposits made to those suspense accounts don't show up on the 13 screen. So it's a specific type of account, and agencies record data in suspense D23 funds for reporting purposes only. So it's important to pay attention to that when you're trying to select which BT pair is going to be correct for that specific type of transfer. For LGIP transfers, transfers to the local government investment pool, we have various different local governments. They may request that you send a payment and deposit it into their local government investment pool account. So agencies can process either expenditures or revenue transfers to the LGIP. And similar to other balance transfers, there's going to be two sides of the entry. So you're going to have your side of the entry, and then the other side of the LGIP transfer is always going to be to Oregon State Treasury, Agency 170, and it's always going to use D23 Fund 0043. We have information on the T code description on the 28B for those T codes that reference that information as well. But LGIP transfers, we send them over to Treasury. Oregon State Treasury then works with a third party to process the transfers to each LGIP account for those local governments. So if you're recording a payment like this, make sure you're using a vendor number and mail code that has been set up for LGIP. So the 51 vendor mail code profile stores those LGIP account numbers. There's a field called license on the 51 profile, and you'll see information populated in that field if it's been set up for LGIP. Typically, to keep it consistent, we try to have it on mail code 001 for those local governments that have set up that ability to pay to their LGIP. And when you're entering the transaction, use that same vendor number and mail code on both sides of the transfer transaction. It's really important to make sure you have correct information before you save your entry. Once an LGIP transaction is posted, it cannot be reversed or deleted in SFMA, as agencies don't have permission to take funds out of an LGIP account. So if an LGIP transfer is processed in error, you will need to reach out to the payment recipient to recover the funds. So, always important to check your coding, but especially important with those LGIP transfers before you save it. Some common errors we see on balance transfers, SFMA may allow your entry, but cash may not actually move at Treasury in the following cases. If you enter your balance transfer transaction in SFMA, but the batch is still on the 530 screen, you may have entered it in edit mode 2. It'll be reflected on your financial inquiry screens and your reports that transfer has posted. But no money is going to actually move at Treasury until the batch is released and clears the 530 screen. If either side of the balance transfer uses a D23 fund that has a Treasury fund of 9999, that is not a real account at Treasury. 9999 is a default. It's used for D23 funds that have no cash activity, or if there's a situation where an account is held outside of Treasury, referred to as cash and bank. You'll see D23s with that 9999. If you use that on balance transfer, it's likely going to error out. Your SFMS analyst, it's not going to error out when you save it. It's going to error out during the nightly cycle. And your SFMS analyst will get an error report and have to reach out to you about the transfer. Usually have to reverse that back out and figure out where that transfer should have actually occurred. The other issue that we've seen sometimes is if you're using suspense account T codes with a receipted account D23 fund. Suspense account T codes post to different GL accounts. So if it's incorrectly used, you may have to work with the receiving agency to correct it. Your SFMS analyst may also have to get involved because suspense account T codes do not allow reversing. So making sure you know what type of account you're sending that money to helps prevent those types of errors. We've also sometimes seen incorrect coding used on the Treasury side of an LGIP. So if you input the incorrect agency, D23 fund, or vendor mail code on the LGIP transaction, cash may not correctly transfer, and you'll need to work with your SFMS analyst to assist. LGIP T codes do not allow reversing. Corrections on balance transfer transactions. Again, for interagency and LGIP transactions, it's important to verify your coding is accurate prior to making the entry to help try to limit potential for corrections. If you enter a balance transfer in edit mode 2, transactions post to SFMA as soon as they are saved. Once saved, if you don't have the appropriate level of security, you may be unable to delete or save changes to those transactions because SFMA prevents one agency from reducing cash for another agency. There are some non-default security levels that will allow you to make corrections, but for the most part, it's kind of restricted to prevent one agency from being able to delete a BT that transferred cash to another agency. So if you run into that issue, reach out to your SFMS analyst if you have questions. You may need to release the batch as it is with the error, and then ask the receiving agency to reverse out the BT to return the cash so you can record it correctly. So just take those extra steps of validation just to make sure everything is accurate if you're transferring funds to another agency, just so you don't have to go through that additional process of correcting something. If the balance transfer transaction has already cleared the 530 screen, there could be multiple ways to correct it. We've got a lot of different BTT codes out there. Consult your SFMS analyst if you need assistance. Our general recommendation is if a BT was incorrectly recorded, usually the simplest solution is to back out the entire original BT exactly as entered and then re-enter a new BT with corrected information. If you had transferred cash to another agency and there was something wrong with it, you may have to ask that receiving agency to back it out because you're not going to be able to reverse that BT because you can't take away cash from another agency. If you are deciding that you're going to correct only one side of a BT, not our standard recommendation, but there may be certain circumstances where you can just correct one side, look at it pretty closely to make sure you're not going to cause statewide balancing errors. We see that frequently. If an agency has transferred cash to another agency and then they're just correcting their side, if it's not coded correctly, if it's changing D23 funds, it could cause a statewide balancing error. So just be aware of that. I've got some links on the slide to some balance transfer resources. The Oregon Accounting Manual has a lot of good information about interfund and interagency transactions. Our SFMS training manual and desk manual have more information. We also have the BT contact list on our website to see if you're working with another agency, who you should contact if you have questions on a BT between agencies. You can also attend our advanced T-code training. We'll talk a lot more about BT transactions there. Any questions?
There is a question in the chat, Liz. Can you do a user class 17 VP, so 222/222R, and then a user class 48 BT, 730, 731 together in the same batch? And will they process an SFMA or do they have to be separate batches? They say it can physically be done in SFMA, but will it process?
I'm wondering if, so user class 17, you have to have someone with the correct security to be able to release it. That's usually a user class 28. And I'm not sure if user class 28 will allow you to release a 730, 731 transaction. Let me look that up really quick. If the security allows you to, you can have different document types in the same batch. Generally, if you're using different user classes, you have to log out and log in. In those types of situations, it's usually cleaner to have a separate batch, but it's not abnormal that we would have different document types in the same batch. So it shouldn't, as long as there's no issues with security of being able to release it, you should be able to do that. And it does look like user class 28 could release a 730, 731 transaction. So I'm not seeing an issue with that. If you do run into an error trying to do that, please let us know.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Scott next to talk about CA View, another tool that may be coming your way soon.
Thank you for, oh, everything just disappeared on me.
Mine is still there, Scott. Tell me
I
to take
can't,
control and move it.
sure, thank you, Amber. And now I can take control. So sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Anyway, hello again, everyone. I will be discussing CA View today. But before we get started, what is CA View? Quite simply, it is an online repository of our archived reports. The only reports archived here are produced reports, so you will still need to set them up in RStars. You can search for reports that are up to 4 years old, but no more than that. Also, you can choose between production, acceptance, and training regions for your search. If this is a bit confusing to you, don't worry. The planned implementation is in 2025, so you won't have to use this anytime soon, but we encourage everyone to view this presentation and get started on learning about it. How do you access a CA View? Well, quite simply, you go to the web address that we will be providing later, enter your username, your RACFID, your password, your RStars password, and choose your repository group, DAS user. Pretty self-explanatory. And how do you navigate CA View? We have two options, find reports and find by index. We will cover both of these in more detail. One note, a lot of you will be learning in one option will be similar to the other option, just with the order reversed. So you're going to be hearing a lot of the same information just presented and in reverse. For navigating by find reports, you will be searching for the report directly. As such, you will need to know the report number and general archive date of the report. The filter function will allow filtering by ID, and the advanced drop-down menu will allow filtering by archive date. On this slide, you can see the step-by-step instructions. Click reports icon under the select by column. Click on filter in the top right-hand corner. Then you can filter by report ID. Keep in mind this function is very picky. If the ID doesn't exactly match the report, it will turn up no results. Or you can click advance and this will bring up the option to filter by archive date. And as for the second part, once everything is properly filtered, you can select open to take you to the logical views. Each logical view has a list of indexes that help you subdivide the report, allowing you to view reports by agency number, cycle date, request type, and more. Native view, however, presents the report for the whole of the state unedited. And I don't suspect many of us will be using native view unless you work in SFMS, so bear in mind. Navigating using indexes, this is the second way to navigate on CA View. This is similar to what we just learned, except you will be searching the index first and then the report second. This is helpful if you know the date and or request number of the report, but not the actual report number itself. As always, you can search using agency number, cycle date, and request type, then hit the apply or enter key. You select the index listing you want based on how much information you have for your query. So right here. Once you do that, you'll be taken into a new page with all the different logical views and fields to input your specific numbers in there. Or the way I use this is I replace the asterisk under agency number and use the agency number instead. And once you hit enter, you can scroll down to the cycle date you want, click on it, and it'll take you to a list of reports that match the cycle date and agency. Well, cycle date, agency number, cycle number, request, and request number are selected. Now we come to saving as a PDF. I think this is what everyone will want to pay attention to once we find the report. You can click save, then convert to PDF. Parameters you want will be landscape, 8-point font. And once you save this will give you a report that is almost identical to the DAS web reports you are printing out on the Columbia website, except it will have no DAS title page, no report distribution page, and a CA view header message at the top that you can just ignore. As for the export function, it's a bit tricky, so you might need to review this slide a few times. And from your report's logical view, click export in the top right corner. Click edit export settings once the box opens up. Click export in the upper right corner of the next page. Click keep. Open the downloads folder. Right click on the file, select open with Excel, then save the document as an Excel workbook. It's a bit of a process, and I couldn't provide visual reference for all those steps on one slide. So when we implement this, I will be happy to help work you through it. The features that we have for the export part is in the export edit section, you can create your own columns before exporting. You can exclude lines based on content or lack thereof, and you can save settings you like as a rule for the report. Once you save a setting, it presets how the report art will be saved, and you can select different rules based on what you have saved. So you can just click on the rule, select export, and automatically export it. A very handy feature. However, it does have some drawbacks. It's kind of hard to split cells separately in the way you want. For cells may contain both letters and numbers, just because the way the export feature works, it goes by column, and doesn't really care about how the data is formatted in those columns, so you'll need to work with it. It saves as an XML file, and it must be resaved as an Excel spreadsheet in order to use it properly. So that will take some getting used to. Difficult to use correctly, as has been stated before, and we are exploring other options for export, though the trail's been running a bit cold on that one. Any questions, anyone? I know this has been a bit esoteric so far. So, do we have any questions in the chat, Amber?
Nope, no questions. Thank you, Scott.
Perfect. And just as a reminder, this will be implemented we're looking at implementation for 2025. So, and we're still working on the documentation for explaining this feature. So be sure to give us any questions and we will all implement it in our next round of documentation. I do see that there's a question from Venus. Will this report show error messages to help clear the 530 screen? No, because this CA view relates to all the reports that are produced by R-stars. It's not one specific report or error messages for the 530 screen, though. I will need to double check on it. We may have a report specifically related to that. As for right now, take it away, Justin.
Awesome. First off, I just wanted to really quickly say thank you to all the presenters, and then also thank you to the over 180 people that attended today. Also, please, if you do have an opportunity, click the link on this slide and provide us some feedback as to what kind of content and material you are looking for that would be helpful. We always appreciate that feedback. And again, thank you so much for attending, and everyone have a fantastic day.
Hey, there is one more question in the chat. For the online DAFA reports, how long are they available online before they are gone? Someone is still here that could answer.
Amber, I can answer that. Sorry. 3 months is how long they're available on our current PDF web report site. When we roll out the CA View tool, we're hoping to have a longer time period where you can access those reports. We haven't finalized what that will be, but we're thinking it would be at least a year.
Thanks, Liz.